2,500 delegates and observers joining us across a continent and an ocean. Not a bad way to launch ourselves into our second century. But wherever you are in the world today, thank you for tuning in to this virtual convention. We have planned some great things over the next 2 days, and we hope you will enjoy the experience. And we can reflect on the fact that a century ago, a pandemic threatened the campaign to gain women the right to vote. It did not stop those women. This pandemic will not stop us. It has been my honor and privilege to serve as your president for the last 4 years. Years which have been historic for our nation and our organization. Who could have known as we left Convention 2016 what was going to happen? And who of us could have dreamed how we would meet the challenges we faced? However, before we move into this convention space, we must acknowledge the events of the past months, the pain our nation and our communities are feeling. The world has been devastated by a pandemic which has killed millions and crippled the world economy. Suffering is ongoing, and we are all struggling to work through it. And this past month, the murder of yet more African Americans has torn the veil that covers the endemic racism, poisons our entire history. Amidst the deep suffering, we must pray that the moment has finally come to face that poisoned heritage, and that we, as a nation and an organization, can begin to take action to change. I would ask for a moment of silence to honor the victims. All the victims down through the centuries who have been sacrificed on the altar of that racism. Thank you. And now, as we reflect on our collective accomplishments over the past 4 years, I want to point with pride to some important pieces of our story. Together, we have impacted more than 12.5 million voters. We took our fight for fair redistricting all the way to the Supreme Court. And in the aftermath of their adverse ruling, we didn't give up, but rather decided to launch the League's first ever national campaign, People-Powered Fair Maps. With our strategic focus on the campaign for making democracy work, we poured our energy into activities related to our election work and redistricting. We have provided nearly $1 million in pass-through grants to leagues throughout this biennium. We focused time and resources to redesign and market Vote 411 voters, and as a result, the award-winning website has served nearly $6.5 million voters, which we have that too, finding election information that they need. We commemorated our 100th anniversary with a coordinated day of action, Women Power the Vote, in all 50 states in the District of Columbia, reaching more than 150,000 people in person and nearly 1 million impressions on social media. Another first for the League. Today, we are in sound financial health, with prudent reserves to see us through tough times and funds to continue to grow the organization and its work. And we have done all this while continuing to transform our organization. In the years leading up to this 100th anniversary, together we have engaged in a process of self-reflection and difficult conversations, both internally and externally, to understand the landscape of voting rights and the League's place in it. With a vision toward the future, we wanted to position the League as a modern and relevant organization, because we are. That meant stripping away outmoded forms of doing our work and adopting new ways, including promoting a culture of data and evaluation. Our transformation has progressed at every level of the organization. With our collective roadmap, we have made progress through action and our collective desire to be a more effective and impactful organization. In the past, we've gone about the work of empowering voters and defending democracy, but not always measuring the impact. We knew all the great work we did, but no one else did, and too often others took the credit. Now we are telling our story with the hard numbers, and what a difference it has made. It gives voters confidence and trust in us, helps our partners and funders see our relevance, and helps the media recognize that this 100-year-old organization is a critical part of making democracy work. So thank you to all of you for taking the time to contribute to these numbers, doing the work, and building our story. While we are a strong organization today, we have much to do in the next century, which for us begins today. As many of you know, the League has not always been welcoming to communities of color, and people outside of our organization like to remind us about this unfortunate truth. I determined early in my presidency that the League of Women Voters needed to acknowledge that history and learn from it. We are more than historic images of our founders. We are a vibrant organization tackling 21st century issues. We have dedicated ourselves to championing the diversity, equity, and inclusion that modern-day activism requires. And our voices are stronger when they represent the many instead of the few. Now, none of this could have been accomplished without the dedicated work of members and staff at every level of the League. But looking back on these 4 years, there are some places where I believe I was able to provide leadership in a time of crisis. I am a member of the League because I believe that every citizen has the right to vote. To the extent to which that right is denied to any citizen, our democracy is in danger. I believe that we must engage in an unceasing fight to protect that right by engaging people in their communities and resisting attempts to prevent them from voting at every level of government. I am here because the League has given me the power to fight that fight. When I was elected president in 2016, we were faced with a number of challenges, some of which were outside our control. What we could control was how we carried out our mission. I championed all efforts to strip away outdated policies and procedures, all those we have to do it this way, and we can't do it that way. My response was always, why? In the process, I was enthusiastically joined by the entire organization as we tore up the rule book and remade ourselves to face the current threats to our democracy and carry out our mission. I have always been a doer, asking what concrete step we can take now, this minute, to start moving. Here too, I have always urged rapid action. When the Supreme Court decision refusing to address political gerrymandering was announced, I was on the phone with our Chief Executive Officer. In 10 minutes, we went from generalized outrage to a 50-state campaign to push back. 2 weeks after that, staff presented the board with a comprehensive campaign, People-Powered Fair Maps. 1 month after it was announced, all 50 state leagues and the District of Columbia had signed on and it was launched. Today, the first phase has wrapped up. Reports are being analyzed and we are moving on to phase 2. We knew that as part of facing our troubled past of racism, we had to do more than just talk about how we needed to talk about it. I am proud to say that in approximately 3 years, we have created a comprehensive program to incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion into our very fabric. A small band of dedicated board members and staff produced an incredible program that is rapidly expanding. And we have transformed our culture of silos. I worked hard with board and staff to grow a culture of shared leadership among all levels of lead, because those silos were getting in the way of our mission. Today, 4 years later, I believe we are more united as an organization than we have ever been. As we begin our second century, this newfound unity brings us closer to our founders' dreams for what they knew we could be. Looking to the next 100 years, our democracy will thrive if people are able to vote for representatives and programs which will nourish our nation. Nothing else matters if people who want to vote are stopped by rules, restrictions, and barriers which make it effectively impossible. Our foremothers knew this when they began the fight for women's suffrage, and it remains true today. It is why we are still here, why we are positioned to defend that right to vote this election year and into the second century of our organization. Thank you again for the great honor of serving as your president.